The glass didn't fall, but it shook. Not from the wind. Not from traffic. It trembled because I slammed my hand on the table. Not hard. Not enough to make a scene. Just enough for the water to ripple, like in a movie right before the monster shows up. She didn't flinch. Instead, she set down her wine glass, placed her napkin over her lap again, and said the words like she had been practicing them in her mouth for weeks. Either obey me, or start packing. And the worst part? She said it with her teeth showing. A smile. Not the passive-aggressive kind. Not the mocking, sarcastic grin you expect when someone's trying to win. No, this was worse. It was calm. Like someone pressing a button they knew would detonate me, not the room. Everyone at the table went quiet. You could hear the jazz track from the restaurant speakers suddenly fill all the space our marriage used to take up. One of her co-workers, that awkward woman from accounting with the weird laugh, shifted in her seat. But no one said anything. I looked around, waiting for someone to do it for me. Someone to jump in and say, "Wait, was that a joke?" But no one saved me, because this wasn't for them. It was for me. I felt my tongue swell in my mouth. I couldn't even swallow. Something primal curled in my chest. Shame? Fury? Fear? I opened my mouth to speak. And then I saw him. Him. 3 seats down. Black blazer. Gray shirt. Cheap leather watch. Nico. Her colleague. The one she never mentioned, until she only mentioned him. He raised his glass to his lips, not to drink, but to hide his smile. And that's when I knew. I wasn't just married to a stranger. I was being managed by one. And something had been happening for a very long time behind my back. While I was smiling, trusting, folding her laundry. Something dark. And this wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the middle, and I'd missed the start entirely. I didn't speak on the drive home. Neither did she. The car was silent except for the clicking of the blinker and the low hum of tires on wet asphalt. We hit 3 red lights in a row. Each one felt like a warning. Each one a checkpoint asking, "Are you sure you want to keep pretending this is fine?" Marlene hummed at one point. Something tuneless, casual, like she was filing paperwork in her head. That was her gift, existing comfortably in discomfort. I used to admire it. Now it made my skin itch. When we pulled into the driveway, she reached for the garage remote like it was just another Wednesday. I sat there, engine still running, hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield at the damp bricks of our house. I thought, if I walk in there with her, I become part of it. Whatever this is, it already swallowed her. It's waiting to see if I'll walk into its mouth too. We didn't talk that night. She changed into her robe and went straight to the guest room. No explanation. No joke. Just silence, like it was all routine. I sat on the edge of the bed for almost 2 hours, staring at the dresser. You know what I kept thinking about? The way her voice didn't rise when she said it. Obey me or start packing. No anger. No chaos. Just certainty. And that's what terrified me. The certainty. Like this was something decided long ago. Something she'd grown into, like a snake shedding its old skin, slithering free into a version of herself I hadn't been invited to see. The next morning, she was gone before sunrise. Left a sticky note on the counter. Meeting in Ithaca. Back late. Don't forget to take the dog to the vet. As if the night before had been a PowerPoint presentation. As if I hadn't just watched my marriage take its mask off and smile. So I did what you're not supposed to do. I went into the guest room. Her perfume was faint, but still there. I noticed 2 things instantly. 1, the bed was made, but the pillow was dented. 2, her travel bag was missing. The one she only used when she wasn't coming back for at least a night. I opened the top drawer of her desk. Inside was a folded note with receipt, scribbled on the back, and a printed email. I didn't recognize the email address. I didn't recognize the tone of voice. It said, "Still on for Sunday? Same room. Let me know if he's out of town." No signature. Just the letter N. Nico. Had to be. My stomach dropped like I'd just leaned back too far in a chair. I could hear blood in my ears. The timeline was unraveling in front of me. And suddenly everything, every cold moment, every sideways glance, every work trip that didn't make sense, started forming a line. A line that pointed away from me. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have. I don't remember grabbing the photo from our bookshelf, either, the one of us from the state fair last year. We looked so happy in it. Or maybe we just looked blurred. I turned it over. She'd written in tiny letters, "We're still good, right?" Were we? I didn't know anymore. But I knew this. If she thought she could rewrite the rules in secret and hand me ultimatums at dinner tables surrounded by coworkers and half-truths, she didn't know me as well as she thought. Because I wasn't going to pack. I was going to investigate. And it was going to start with Sunday. I showed up on Sunday, 2 hours early. I parked across from the Hellbridge Inn. Not a glamorous place, more like the kind of hotel you book when you don't want questions on your receipt. Beige bricks, uneven blinds in the windows, and a sign out front that still said free HBO in fading red letters. I sat in my car, engine off, hands shaking slightly. Not from nerves, from adrenaline. My body already knew what I wasn't ready to admit. I was about to see it for real. Not just clues, not just shadows, but proof. She told me she was going to a wellness conference that day, 2 hours away. Even said she'd booked a ticket. She left the itinerary on the kitchen table, printed in color, even highlighted the session names. But there was one problem. The email header from the paper I found in her drawer had a timestamp. 11:04 p.m. Friday. And it said same room. That meant this had happened before. Multiple times. And this Sunday wasn't an event, it was a pattern. I sat in that car for 87 minutes watching people go in and out. A man in pajama pants walked a golden retriever twice. A teenager came out with a bag of ice and a soda. A maid with a laundry cart pushed past a man in sunglasses who looked like he hadn't slept. But none of them were her. And then, at exactly 12:41 p.m., a silver sedan pulled up. Windows tinted. Clean. A car I didn't recognize. And out stepped her. Marlene. Black coat. Large sunglasses. Hair tied up again in that precise little knot she always does when she wants to seem low effort but polished. She looked around once, then walked toward the front door. Not a glance back. Like she belonged there. 10 minutes later, another car pulled up. A deep blue one, scratched on the bumper. And out came him. Nico. He was taller than I remembered. In jeans and a jacket that looked way too new for someone who, according to Marlene, doesn't even iron his shirts. He walked casually, like he'd done this before. Like the hardest part was parking. I wanted to get out. I wanted to storm the lobby, scream in the hallway, throw open a door and find her there, shocked, guilty, begging for an explanation. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about drama. It was about truth. And if I learned anything in my boring government job, it's this. Truth sticks better when you document it. So I took pictures. Of the cars. Of them going in. Of the timestamp on my phone. I even filmed a short video from across the street. Heart pounding so hard the camera shook. And then I waited. 3 hours passed. They didn't come out. I imagined them laughing, laying on those stiff hotel sheets, her head on his chest, while my world, the one I thought I was maintaining with toothpaste refills and dog walks and Friday night pasta, burned outside without her noticing. I started crying without realizing it. Not loud, not ugly, just a slow leak, like a pipe cracked beneath the foundation. At 4:53 p.m., the door opened. She came out first. Alone. No smile. Just that same composure she always wore like armor. Nico followed 30 seconds later. Different door. No eye contact between them. She got into her car. He into his. And they drove off in different directions like actors leaving a set after the final take. I didn't follow. I didn't confront. Not yet. Because now I knew something bigger than just betrayal. They were organized. Coordinated. Strategic. This wasn't messy. This wasn't a fling that spiraled out of control. This was a second life. And she had no idea that I'd stepped into it. I sat in my car, shaking again, not from shock this time. From the cold. The sun was starting to set, and my battery was at 9%. I texted her, just one word. How's the wellness seminar? She replied 4 minutes later. Incredible. Eye-opening stuff. Wish you were here, red heart. I stared at that heart emoji for a long time. She was still pretending, which meant I still had time. And now, I had a new goal. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to find out everything. Who, when, why, how long, all of it. I was going to burn her second life to the ground. Quietly. Monday morning, I did something I had never done before in our 12-year marriage. I faked a fever. I called my boss and said I might have picked up something from a takeout order. Don't worry. I added, I'll work remote if I feel better. He said to rest. I thanked him and hung up while staring at the framed photo on my desk, the one where Marlene had scribbled, "Keep reaching," in black ink on the border. I used to think she meant dreams. Now I wasn't sure what she'd wanted me to reach for. Her approval? Her forgiveness? My suitcase. She thought I didn't know. That's what gave me power. She walked through our house like a queen convinced her palace was impenetrable. I started watching her closely. Her rhythms. Her patterns. Monday and Tuesday, she was back to normal. Kind, distant. Not cold, not warm. Just bland. Like she was waiting for something to pass. I almost wondered if she thought I'd forgotten about Sunday entirely. But I didn't. And by Wednesday, I had a plan. It started with her gym bag. She never used to go to the gym, not really. But over the last few months, she started working out 3 times a week at a place called Corinist. I'd never been inside. I only knew the name because it was printed on her keychain. On Wednesday morning, she rushed out in her athletic gear at 6:52 a.m. sharp. I waited 10 minutes. Then I went into the guest room and opened her closet. The gym bag was gone, as expected, but what I hadn't noticed before was the second tote bag near the back, hidden beneath an old fleece blanket she never wore anymore. Inside, a cheap Android phone, 2 chargers, a pair of prescription sunglasses I'd never seen, and a folded brochure for an Italian cooking class that neither of us had ever taken. I stared at that phone. My hands were shaking again, this time not with adrenaline, but something closer to nausea. My body was rejecting this reality like spoiled food. I pressed the power button. It buzzed alive. Lock screen. But no Face ID. No fingerprint scan. Just a passcode. I tried the first 6 digits of her birthday. Nothing. Then my birthday. Nothing again. Then, I typed in the numbers printed on the cooking class brochure, 109482. It unlocked. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. But the truth is, I felt small. Like I had just stepped into a world I wasn't built to understand. The message app had only one contact saved. N. I opened the thread. N. You were incredible last time. Marlene, I had to wash the sheets twice. N. Worth it. I keep thinking about your hand on the window. Marlene, don't. I'll lose control at work. N. Lose it. Marlene, not yet. N. You're still pretending? Marlene, let me control the exit. You promised. N. Time's ticking. M. You can't fake a marriage forever. Marlene, watch me. I read it again. And again. That last line burrowed into my chest like a tick. Watch me. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I placed it back exactly as I found it, folded the blanket over the tote bag, and closed the closet. But something inside me broke differently this time. It wasn't grief. It was precision. I no longer needed to ask whether she loved me, or when this started, or why she did it. All of those questions were dead ends now. What mattered was what came next, her exit plan. She was waiting, controlling the timing. But she didn't know something vital. I had stopped playing the part. That night, I sat across from her at dinner and asked her about her day. She told me she had a great session at Corinist and that she was sore from glut exercises. I nodded, pretending to be proud. She asked how I was feeling. I said I was better. She smiled, and I studied her smile like it was a foreign object. I had once believed in that smile. I had once proposed under that smile, folded laundry to that smile, built a life around it. Now I knew it was an instrument, a tool to keep me just asleep enough. I excused myself early, said I needed to catch up on emails. She kissed my cheek like a nurse checking vitals. No heat, no hesitation. And when she went to bed, I sat in my office in the dark, staring at my own reflection in the monitor screen. Not answering emails, not scrolling, just watching my own face as I whispered out loud to no one in particular. You're going to leave me, Marlene, but not the way you think. 2 days passed. I went to work. I came home. I cooked dinner. I loaded the dishwasher and emptied it like someone who still believed things could be clean again. Marlene acted normal. She asked if I'd thought about getting a haircut. I said maybe this weekend. We watched a show together, something about architects building homes on cliffs. She said, "That's our dream, right?" And I nodded, even though I knew the only thing perched on a cliff now was our marriage. But on Saturday morning, the thread began to unravel again, and not from her this time. It came from someone I hadn't heard from in 6 years. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something, maybe intuition, maybe boredom, made me pick up. I said hello. No one answered. Just silence, then a click. A few seconds later, a voicemail notification popped up. I tapped play and held the phone to my ear, still half distracted by a pair of inside-out socks. Then I heard it. Ellis. Hey, it's Clara. I know it's been forever, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but I think you deserve to know something. I wasn't sure at first, but I saw her. I saw her. At the hotel. Room 206. With him. And she saw me too. She froze. I didn't say anything, but, God, I don't even know if you know. Maybe you do. But I couldn't sleep without telling you. I'm sorry if this wrecks things. You deserve better than secrets. I'll go now. Just be careful. I didn't move for a full minute. I just stood there with a dish towel in my hand, staring at the wall. Clara. That name hadn't crossed my mind in years. She used to be a friend of Marlene's. Not close, but orbiting. The kind of friend you invite to your wedding but don't keep in touch with. She and Marlene had a falling out over something vague, and after that, I never saw her again. Until now. And apparently, neither had Marlene, until she saw Clara at the Hellbridge Inn. That changed everything. Because now I knew for sure, Marlene was scared. She'd seen someone from our past, someone who might blow up the lie she'd been carefully stitching together. And her response wasn't confrontation. It was silence. She didn't mention Clara. Didn't joke about running into an old friend. Didn't spin a cover story. She buried it. And people only bury things they're scared to dig up. I sat down on the stairs, phone still in hand, and played the voicemail again. Room 206. Clara's voice cracked when she said it. Like she hadn't just seen something private. She'd seen something corrosive. Something that changed the way she viewed Marlene altogether. That afternoon, I texted Clara. I kept it simple. Thank you. Can we talk? She didn't respond that day. Or the next. I started to worry she'd backed off. Maybe Marlene had reached out. Maybe she'd convinced her it was nothing, like she'd done to so many others before me. But then, late Sunday night, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Clara. Tomorrow. 8 p.m. The old train station. Don't tell her. I read that message a dozen times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because it scared me. Clara wasn't asking for a coffee shop meeting or a safe, neutral place. She chose the old train station, a place half abandoned, where no one would overhear us, where stories could be told without witnesses. I didn't tell Marlene. The next morning, she left for work like normal. Kissed my cheek. Told me not to forget to pick up more trash bags. I promised I wouldn't. And all I could think while she walked to her car was this. She's no longer just lying to me. She's lying in layers. To everyone. All the time. And maybe that's what makes this kind of betrayal worse than physical cheating. The erasure of trust so complete that even the smallest exchange starts to feel like a trap. That night, I drove to the train station 10 minutes early. The parking lot was empty except for one pickup truck with a cracked windshield. I parked 3 spots away and waited. At 8:02, Clara pulled up in a dark green SUV. I barely recognized her. Older, tired, but her eyes were the same, sharp, urgent. She stepped out, walked over without hesitation, and said, I don't have long. She might already suspect I called you. Then she opened her coat pocket and pulled out something I never expected to see. A USB drive. She held it out. This has the security cam footage from the hotel. I know someone who works front desk. Room 206, 2 Sundays ago. It's them. I didn't just see her in the hallway. I saw what happened inside. My throat tightened. What do you mean? Clara stared at me like she wished she didn't have to say it. I mean, it wasn't just a fling, Ellis. It's deep, coordinated, sick. You need to see for yourself. I took the drive from her hand. I didn't thank her. I didn't know how. I just watched her leave and knew nothing about my life was going to feel solid again until I plugged that drive into my laptop. And even then, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. It took me 3 hours to plug in the USB drive. I wish I could tell you I raced home and slammed it into my laptop like someone desperate for answers. I didn't. I sat with it in my pocket like it was a bomb with a timer I couldn't see. I poured a glass of whiskey I didn't want. I vacuumed the living room twice. I took Baxter for the longest walk of his life until his legs practically gave out. I even considered hiding the drive in the garage, like it was contraband from another reality I wasn't ready to enter. But by midnight, I had run out of distractions. The house was still. Marlene had fallen asleep hours earlier. I could hear her soft, predictable breathing through the door. She sleeps like someone with nothing to hide. It used to make me feel safe. Now it just sounded rehearsed. I opened my laptop. Inserted the drive. No password. Just a folder labeled 206_CM_1_full. There were 2 video files inside. One was 4 minutes long. The other, 47. I clicked the short one first. It was hallway footage, fixed angle, grainy, time-stamped. The date matched. The first thing I saw was Marlene, standing outside room 206, wearing that same black coat from last Sunday, glancing at her phone. After 10 seconds, the door opened. Nico. No hug, no kiss. Just a nod. She stepped in. He followed. Door shut. That was it. I stared at the closed door on the screen like it could still open. Then I opened the second file. It wasn't hallway footage. It was inside the room. My hands went ice cold. Hotel rooms aren't supposed to have cameras inside. But there it was, wide-angle security cam, embedded discreetly above the mirror near the minibar. I watched as Marlene walked in, dropped her coat on the chair, and immediately turned to Nico. They didn't speak at first. They just looked at each other. And then she said something I'll never forget, something so eerie it made my body lock up, like I'd suddenly become furniture. He still has no idea. He thinks I'm his future. Nico laughed, the kind of laugh that you let out when you've already won. Marlene pulled a notebook from her bag. A real notebook. Paper. She flipped through pages and read off something I couldn't hear clearly, but Nico nodded as if they were reviewing plans. Not texts. Not secret flirty emails. Plans. Schedules. Notes. And then, they spoke about me. Nico said, "Does he suspect?" Marlene replied, "If he did, he wouldn't stay this quiet." Ellis panics out loud. He spirals. He leaves trails. Then she looked toward the mirror, toward the camera, and fixed her hair. She had no idea she was being recorded. No clue. She went on, calmly, almost academically. He's a structure guy? Habitual. Boring. He still thinks love is a behavior. Do the dishes, kiss goodnight, stay faithful. But love is leverage. And I'm done being someone's codependent therapist. I stopped the video. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I just sat there, fingers frozen on the trackpad, mouth slightly open. And I realized something I didn't expect. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the analysis. She had studied me, dismantled me, like a scientist picking apart an old machine to prove why it no longer deserved to run. I had become a hypothesis she'd already confirmed. Her words weren't filled with passion or cruelty. They were worse. They were professional. The tape went on. More footage. Touching. Intimacy. Planning. Laughter. At one point, she opened her phone and showed Nico something. He smiled. Then he kissed her. She didn't pull away. She leaned in. But even as I watched their bodies move closer, I wasn't thinking about the cheating anymore. That part had already calcified into a numbness I couldn't describe. I was thinking about that notebook. The handwritten one. Because in it, she was keeping track of something. And I had never seen her write anything on paper in years. She was a digital person. She journaled through Google Docs. She bookmarked articles, used task managers, dictated notes to her phone. So what did she need to hide in ink? That became my new question. The next layer. Because this wasn't just a case of infidelity. It wasn't even just a second life. It was an operation. The footage ended at 47 minutes and 13 seconds. They left together. No guilt. No goodbye kisses. Just efficiency. She straightened her hair in the mirror, adjusted her bra strap, and walked out like she was heading into a meeting. I ejected the USB, dropped it in a sock, and hid it behind the loose vent cover in the laundry room. And then, I sat in the dark for what felt like hours, asking myself the same question over and over again. What else don't I know? Because if there was a notebook, there might be more. And I wasn't going to wait for her to hand it to me. 2 days passed. I acted normal. That was the hardest part. I still handed her the mail when I got home. Still asked if she wanted tea before bed. Still watched our favorite detective show with her and laughed when I was supposed to. But my eyes were different. I could feel it, like they'd adjusted to a darker kind of light. She'd look at me sometimes with that same soft gaze, and I'd wonder how many other men had seen it and thought it meant something. I used to believe it meant home. Now it looked like muscle memory. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. I was no longer just grieving. I was digging. She had a notebook. I'd seen it on the hotel footage. Cream-colored, medium-sized, spiral-bound. It was filled with handwritten notes. Lists. Timelines. Nico read from it. She referenced it like it was a playbook. That notebook had answers, and I was going to find it. The problem was, our house wasn't big, and Marlene wasn't sloppy. If she went to the trouble of keeping it off her devices, it meant she didn't want it discoverable. That ruled out drawers, closets, desk organizers. She knew I had access to all of those. So I started looking in the places people forget they use. The liminal spaces. Behind picture frames. In luggage compartments. Inside holiday decor bins. I searched at night, when she slept. I waited until her breathing got that slow, steady rhythm and slipped out of bed without turning on the lights. I had memorized every creak in the hallway floor years ago. Now I tiptoed around them like a burglar in my own life. It was on the third night, just after 2 a.m., that I noticed something strange. We have a narrow bookshelf in the upstairs hallway. She picked it out herself from a second-hand store in Kingston. It's filled with old textbooks, candles we never light, and decorative glass jars with fake lavender. The kind of shelf you forget exists. But that night, I knocked my shin against the bottom edge while passing. I winced, crouched down, and went to adjust the lowest row of books, and noticed something odd. There was a space. Between the back of the shelf and the wall, maybe an inch. But it created a small, vertical hollow behind the books. I tapped it with my knuckle. It sounded different. Not just hollow, insulated. That's when I noticed one of the books on the top shelf didn't have a title. A plain black spine. No dust. Nowhere. I pulled it. It wasn't a book. It was a hollow shell, a fake cover glued around a foam insert. Inside was a single key and a folded slip of paper that said 4th drawer down, hall cabinet. My heart thudded like I'd been punched. The hallway cabinet was where we kept guest towels and extra shampoo. Nothing important. I raced there, opened it, and yanked out the bottom drawers one by one. In the 4th drawer, behind a stack of unused pillowcases, was a small fireproof box. Nothing fancy, but the key fit. Inside, the notebook. I stood there for a moment, staring at it like it might disintegrate if I touched it wrong. It looked exactly like the one from the video. Cream cover, spiral binding, a small gold sticker on the back that said Ridgepoint Stationery Company. It was heavier than I expected. Filled. I opened it. Page 1. Sequence map, primary path. There were diagrams. Timelines. Notes in red ink. Everything was written in Marlene's neat, deliberate handwriting. But these weren't romantic scribbles or daydreams. These were plans. Cold. Tactical. Some pages were even dated, months back. I flipped through. Ellis usually leaves house between 7:35 and 7:50. Pattern breaks only during extreme weather or illness. Nico access equals confirmed. No connection to shared social networks. Risk level low. Target conversation number 3. Test emotional deflection using professional stress as cover. Maintain Ellis engagement through nostalgia cues. 1E. Bring up State Fair /Red Scarf /Baxter memories. I stopped breathing for a moment. She wasn't just cheating. She was managing me. Like a character in an experiment. She had written down my responses to arguments. My patterns of speech when I was tired versus when I was suspicious. She had color-coded risk zones. She even logged the date of our last intimate moment and wrote, Post-intimacy guilt equals emotional neutralization window, approximate 5 days. Used to reset suspicion. There was a section titled Exit Prep. I flipped to it, hands trembling. Financial untangling started. Credit card in my name only. Personal savings rerouted. Therapist prepared for narrative reinforcement. Diagnosis secured. Emotional neglect plus anxious/avoidant attachment justification. Move out scenario. If required, use false pretext, job relocation/family emergency. Do not reveal Nico immediately. Maintain dignity image. Final step, key confrontation. Language rehearsal. Obey me or start packing. Watch for facial microreactions. Adjust delivery if too aggressive. I dropped the notebook onto the floor. The room spun. I gripped the cabinet edge to stay upright. I had just read the sentence she'd said at dinner. Word for word. It wasn't improvised. It was scripted, planned, rehearsed. She had written me a role in her exit fantasy and fed me the line, like I was part of a show she was directing. And I said nothing. I had said nothing. I sat on the carpet and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. I wasn't just betrayed. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being rewritten. And now, I had her script. Every word, every plan, every lie. She had built this entire second life thinking I was too quiet, too dull, too passive to ever see behind the curtain. But she was wrong. I had the notebook. And I wasn't going to stop until I found out how far the script went and who else was in the cast. The next morning, I made pancakes. Blueberry, her favorite. I even added cinnamon like she always asked, even though I used to hate the way it clashed with syrup. Marlene came downstairs still in her robe, phone in hand, scrolling through whatever curated version of life she lived in. She kissed my cheek and said I was in a good mood today. I smiled and told her I had the day off. She said, "That's nice." She had no idea. She didn't notice anything. Not the USB drive now tucked inside an envelope on my desk. Not the notebook, safely scanned and backed up in 4 locations. Not the fact that I had been on the phone until 2 a.m. with a lawyer, a friend from college, and, most importantly, my sister Sarah, who worked in private banking and had quietly helped me prepare my version of the exit plan. By 3 p.m., Marlene left the house for her volunteer shift. A lie. I knew she wasn't going to the shelter. I didn't care anymore. Because that day, for the first time in a year, I wasn't afraid of her silence. While she was gone, I changed the locks. Everything had been arranged the night before. My name off the joint accounts. My paycheck rerouted. Utilities split. Her name removed from the title of the house. Legally, she had signed it over a year ago without realizing it. In a refinancing agreement I'd quietly initiated and she hadn't read closely. I called in favors I hadn't touched in a decade. People I'd helped once when they were desperate, who still remembered the version of me before I became quiet. Before I became small. I was done being small. When she came back around 7:45, her key didn't work. She tried twice, then knocked, calmly, expecting me to open the door with a look of confusion so she could explain it away, probably blame the locksmith, or tell me I needed to get better tools. But when I opened the door, I was holding the notebook. Her face changed. Slightly. Not panic. Not shame. Calculation. But I spoke before she could. I've read everything. Watched everything. I know about Nico. I know about the account in your sister's name. I know about the therapy setup, the exit rehearsals, the manipulation logs, the financial duplicity, the travel receipts, the gaslighting, the schedule syncing, the key phrases. I know it all. She didn't move. Her mouth opened like she was going to say something. Maybe lie, maybe scream, maybe cry. But I wasn't interested in hearing it anymore. You wanted me to collapse. You planned for that. You built your exit around it. But I didn't collapse. I woke up. And now I'm closing the door you assumed you'd get to walk out of dramatically. I stepped aside and handed her a folder. Inside were printed copies of the emails, transcripts of the texts, the legal notice from my lawyer, and the notarized agreement outlining the house transfer. It was all done. Clean. Quiet. Non-negotiable. She took the folder with slow hands. Looked at me for a long time, and for the first time, maybe ever, she looked lost. I said nothing more. Just shut the door. And this time, when it closed, it didn't feel like a collapse. It felt like a beginning. The weeks that followed were strange, quiet, but not the same kind of quiet. It was a peaceful one. The kind that follows a storm you survived. I didn't post about it. Didn't tell many people. I let the notebook speak for itself in the divorce. She never contested it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was ashamed. Or maybe, and this is what I choose to believe, she realized I wasn't the man she thought I was. I still have the notebook. Not because I need it anymore, but because it reminds me that I ignored my instincts too long. That I let charm and routine and a fear of being too sensitive blind me. Now, I listen to that voice. Now, I start over. Not as the husband who obeyed. Not as the man who packed. But as the man who watched the house burn and quietly rebuilt the foundation beneath it, brick by brick, in silence and in strength.